Welcome to Lit and Unfiltered by My Element, the podcast where real talk meets cannabis culture. Whether you're lighting up for wellness, relaxation, or curiosity, this is the space for raw, unfiltered conversations that go beyond the buzz. In every episode, we'll spark discussions that keep it real, give you the facts and push boundaries. No fluff, no filler. Just real talk about the cannabis revolution happening right now. So roll with us, kick back, and let's dive into another lit conversation. Proudly brought to you by My Element Electric Lighters. Make your own flame. Now to your hosts, Jax and Mia.
Okay, so we're diving into something I've always been curious about, the whole cannabis and creativity thing. Is it real or just, a hazy stereotype?
Well, it's definitely more than just a stereotype. What's interesting is we're starting to see real science unraveling how cannabis, especially THC, actually interacts with the creative centers in our brains.
So it's not just smoke equals inspiration, but something's actually going on up there.
Yeah, it's not quite that simple. Think of your endocannabinoid system, the one THC interacts with, like an orchestra conductor.
Okay, I like where this is going.
It helps regulate a bunch of functions, including mood and, you guessed it, creative thinking. So by using cannabis, we might be tweaking the conductor's tempo a bit.
And getting a more creative symphony as a result.
Exactly. Research even suggests that low doses of cannabis might actually boost what's called divergent thinking. Those aha moments when you find a completely new solution. That's divergent thinking in action.
Like those late-night brainstorming sessions, maybe with a little inspiration on hand. Could have some science behind them.
There's definitely evidence for that. It's not that cannabis magically transforms you into Mozart overnight. It's more about potentially shifting those brainwave patterns, maybe increasing blood flow to those areas linked with creativity.
So literally changing how our brains work when we use it.
Some research suggests that, but others say it might be more of a placebo effect. You feel more creative, even if the work itself isn't objectively better.
A creativity placebo. So is it all in our heads then? Or, does it even matter if you're getting positive results?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And this is where it gets even more interesting. Look at history for a second. We're talking brilliant minds, the Beatles, Jack Kerouac. They all attributed some of their creative processes to cannabis.
And what about Steve Jobs? He even said that cannabis helped him relax and think differently. It's not just a counterculture thing anymore.
Exactly. It's breaking free from those old stereotypes. Yeah. For decades, cannabis was demonized. Now we're seeing innovators across all kinds of fields embracing it.
It's shedding that whole lazy stoner image, finally.
It's more nuanced than that. Those stereotypes are out there, often because of how media portrays cannabis use. But today's cannabis culture is way more diverse.
Yeah, you think about those classic stoner comedies, it's all munchies and goofing off.
Yeah.
Not exactly the image of a creative powerhouse.
Right. For many people, that portrayal couldn't be further from the truth. Just like with any tool, it's about responsible use and understanding how it affects you personally.
Okay, so how do we move past those stereotypes and figure out if cannabis actually boosts creativity or if it's all, like you said, just a hazy placebo?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And it's tricky. It's easy to feel that kind of burst of creative energy, but is it real or just, feeling more open to different things?
Right, like that whole all problems are easier to solve at 2 a.m. thing. Maybe swap 2 a.m. for after a little cannabis, but does it really work like that?
It's an interesting thought, and that's what makes this so tricky to pin down. For some people, cannabis really does seem to help them get into that flow state. Think of like a musician just jamming, completely lost in the music. Cannabis might be their on-ramp to that.
So not forcing creativity, but removing the obstacles.
Exactly. So many creative people, we all deal with it, that self-doubt, that inner critic. And cannabis, for some, it can quiet those voices down, let them experiment more freely, creating that mental space where it's okay to just try new things.
That makes sense. It's almost like how some people need music to work, right?
Yeah.
Some silence, some white noise. Some need a little something extra to get those ideas flowing.
I like that analogy because just like different kinds of music can make you feel different things, different strains of cannabis can have different effects. Some help you focus, some make you more aware of your senses, some are better for unwinding after a long day of, creating.
So it's super individual. What might help someone write a whole screenplay might make someone else stare at a blank page for an hour, convinced they're a genius.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to use it responsibly. Start slow, especially if you're new to this whole thing. You wouldn't drink a whole pot of coffee before sitting down to write. Right.
Not if I planned on getting any actual work done, that's for sure.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for you. That microdose that just kind of shifts your perspective a little bit helps you relax and focus without being overwhelming.
So we can ditch the cliche of the stoner genius. It's more about mindfulness, right?
Yeah.
Like cannabis is a tool, not some sort of shortcut to brilliance.
That's a great way to put it. And for some people, that means incorporating it into their creative rituals, like maybe a microdose before a brainstorming session, or if they have writer's block. It's really about figuring out what works for you.
But there's still that risk of overdoing it, even if it's not about getting high. Like too much of a good thing can backfire, right? What advice is there for someone who thinks, sign me up for the creative boost, but is also worried about those downsides?
Yeah, too much, and suddenly you're reorganizing your spice rack instead of writing that hit song. It's easy to fall into that trap. That's why you got to pay attention to how your mind and body react, you know? Think of it like, well, any tool. You wouldn't use a hammer for everything, right?
Not if I'm trying to, like
Right.
sew something.
Exactly. So yeah, start small, see what works for you, and pay attention to those cues from your body. Feeling anxious or kind of scattered might be a sign to ease up a bit. The goal here is to help your creativity not send it into overdrive, you know?
Find that sweet spot between just right and whoa, went too far. Which kind of brings us back to that original question, right? Is this cannabis creativity connection all in our heads?
Mm-hmm.
If it's partly a placebo effect, if that's what gets the creative juices flowing, does it even matter?
See, that's the really interesting part of all this. We've talked about THC and how it affects the brain, but there's also that mental side, the psychology of it all. Just believing cannabis makes you more creative might actually change how you approach things.
It's like that study where they told runners they had on these special shoes, and even though they were just regular sneakers, the runners clocked faster times. Our minds are capable of some pretty wild stuff.
Exactly. And that makes me think, if our mindset can have that much of an impact, what does that mean for how we approach any creative challenge, cannabis or not?
So it's not about cannabis being some magic pill. It's more about being open to new ideas, not being afraid to experiment.
Right. It's about that curiosity, questioning things, being open to ideas you weren't expecting. And hey, maybe a little exploration along the way helps spark those aha moments that lead to something truly amazing.
It sounds like the real key to unlocking creativity, whether you use cannabis or not, is understanding just how powerful your own mind is. So next time you're facing down a creative challenge, remember, the most important tool might be the one between your ears.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Lit and Unfiltered by My Element. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and picked up some fresh insights on cannabis culture. Also, don't forget to check out myelement.store for our full range of electric lighters and accessories, designed with style, sustainability, and free lifetime replacement in mind. Still here? Cool. Here's an exclusive heads up just for our listeners. We've got a flash sale coming soon with over 50% off select lighters as well as some wild giveaways. You won't want to miss it. Head over to myelement.store. Join the crew and keep an eye on your inbox for the details. Until next time, keep it lit. My Element. Make your own flame.